what made the weird kid at your school the weird kid? He dressed up as a GD every day from elementary to the last day of high school, and he had a lightsaber and would chase people who'd bullied him around with it. I'm actually surprised the teachers didn't take it away. He did have some emotional/personality problems as well. I wouldn't want to fight a GD either. It's unfortunate for you. I am no GD. Carried around a briefcase with two 2-liter bottles of Coke, clearly intent to distribute. Whenever it rained there would be dead worms on the cement. He ate them. Not like 1 or 2, he brought bags with him from home to fill up and eat like fucking gummy worms. Teachers never believed us when we told them, so he had to have eaten hundreds over the years in elementary school. A meal fit for a king. Undiagnosed autism. Came here to say this. Now that I have an autistic child, it's really obvious in hindsight. Yet, to an adult it's pretty obvious. Too bad many of those adults don't teach their kids to recognize and respect those. It was the early 90s. In those days, getting a diagnosis for something as simple as ADHD was a huge struggle, and also came with massive negative social stigma. It was considered better to just have your kid be considered weird rather than a neurotypical. Dunno if it was a case better to have your kid labeled as weird than autistic. IMO, it was more people saw autism as Raymond-type behaviors, and those quirky kids were just that, quirky, odd, shy, nerdy, etc. I think people thought autism was only those with severe symptoms. Turned yellow, literally, because he went on a carrot-only diet, shaved his eyebrows off, no idea why, and blew up his garage trying to make his own nuclear bomb. He died in his 20s, after taking too much cough syrup and drinking homemade alcohol. Damn, that's sad. The poor guy sounds like he had some issues. I forgot to mention that he thought he had appendicitis and attempted to do surgery on himself. Thankfully he only nicked the skin. He was considered a mathematical genius and got full scholarships to several colleges, but didn't think any of them could teach him anything. Crazy scientist-o. The Vine where kid goes, I have the power of God and I'm on my side, and screams like a banshee went to my middle school. He was maybe 4 grades underneath me, but his weirdness turned him into one of the most popular kids in his grade. A fucking legend he made there. Elementary school. She'd lay down on the bathroom floor and pee into the drain. She'd go HSSSSSS while she did it. What are you doing? Playing snakes? Apostrophe. Others would be encouraged to join Snake Club. Don't you leave us hanging, did you join the club? I was just a kid, but it was weird enough to leave and use a different washroom. Bringing a dead bird in his beanie and setting a fire in the boys' bathroom trash can at school. The boys at your school had their own trash can? We had a kid join our 5th grade class halfway through the year. The entire grade was given a chat about how this kid is different, but we need to be kind. He spent every recess humping the playground equipment. We were kind to him, but also terrified. In high school, we had a kid who only wore wolf shirts. He was Australian, so I just convinced everyone that it was a cultural thing. He was nice and didn't deserve to be picked on. Aussie here, are you suggesting that there are shirts that don't have wolves on them? No fucking way. Is it even a shirt without the wolf? He made up a thing where, if you said potato to him, he would do a silly dance. Halfway through high school, I guess he decided he didn't like it anymore. But then people would just come up to him and yell potato at him over and over while he just tried to ignore them. I felt bad for him. Lmao. She bit people. Think I got bit by 4 different kids when I was little. Guess I was tasty. Always wore shorts and used a wheelie luggage as a backpack. Also moved like a freight train. No foot was safe. I remember another weird kid from my school had a backpack like this. He was walking so fast, and one of my classmates just runs past him in the hallway and goes, "You're gonna miss your flight." That must be an autism thing or something, because we had a kid like that in my school too. Wheelie backpack, wore a lot of odd-fitting shorts and polos, and he always walked as fast as possible in the halls. Like, almost to the point of running but not quite. He would bump into people and get yelled at by teachers, but he kept doing it. NGL, I was a little jealous of the wheelie backpack. Gonna second this, have an autistic buddy. When we were in school he was that kid. Not only was he large, tall and in stature not fat, for his age, like towering over some teachers, he maintained an impeccable straight, shoulder-length haircut that was half neon blue and half neon green that never faded. He also brought his katana to school, which how that was allowed in the mid-2000s I'll never understand, and had everyone including teachers call him Phoenix. He sounds fucking rad, and also insanely confident in himself. In a cool way though. He totally was. Even though he was the weird kid, he was never bullied, and was super smart and nice. Just kind of a loner, walking to the best of his own drum. So you went to school with Ed Kemper? She was really into horses and sometimes would nag when our primary school teacher asked her questions in class. Like she would whinny, or would say nay. Cause depending on the question, one could be correct. I came here to see if I got mentioned. I did the same. Not yet. Let's see, he wasn't fully potty trained till almost first grade. He would randomly flip pencils back and forth in front of his face. He would melt down if he couldn't get something right the first time, couldn't play sports due to terrible coordination, stuttered like crazy while talking with a very bad lisp, would nearly puke if he ate any unfamiliar food, and daydreamed about Angry Birds during class all day. Really weird kid. The reason I know him so well is because he was me. Autism isn't a fun or quirky thing to have to deal with. Most of my major issues were fixed by the time I got to middle school, thankfully, due to having very supportive teachers, therapists, and parents. Still have shit coordination, and can't eat normal food (P). When I read the first paragraph, I was like, oh, that definitely sounds like autism. I am glad you had support. He was tall and skinny, would say the name of a girl in class a few times, and then threw his eraser at the ceiling, in the middle of class. He did all sorts of weird things. At winter camp, we witnessed him take a large tube down a snow hill, hit a ramp, and while flying into the air, the back of his boot, with legs still attached, hit him on the top of his head. Imagine that flexibility. We still discuss this over 40 years later like we witnessed Jesus walk on water. The fall scorpion. I did this when I was 13. I was standing on top of fence with hedge shears trying to trim a hedge. I'm so lucky as I fell I made sure the shears were thrown in the opposite direction to me. Also I had my 3 friends watching the whole thing, and initially they were silent as they thought I just died. But as I got up they broke out into absolute hysterical laughter for a solid 5 minutes. It's always brought up when we see each other. Autism, but we didn't know what that was back then. I wasn't a bully or anything, but looking back I really wish I would have gone out of my way to include that guy in more stuff. Life was probably really difficult for him. Yet, same here. We didn't have words for this type of thing when I was in grade school, or at least they weren't commonly known. I actually was friendly to the kid in question, since I was a fellow social reject, but even I had my limits with him. When you say limits, what do you mean? Like, why was he so weird? Asking for a friend shrug. It was me. I was poor. Couldn't afford decent clothes. I wore stuff 10 years old. Couldn't afford much of anything. Worked a full-time job after school, making me the kid that never knew any of my classmates. I doubt anyone I went to school with would remember what I looked like. Same. Hand-down clothes, and even shoes from my cousins and our parents. Never could afford school trips. Went home for lunch breaks, because school lunches were too expensive. I was always underweight and shorter than my peers. Never had any friends. And I was bullied because of it. Also because I worked weekends and summer breaks since the age of 14. But I turned it around. At the age of 29 now, I've got an amazing husband, decent job, own my property, whilst most of my classmates are still at the same immature level they were back in the day. He played a role in school theatre. When the OK was over, and everyone came up on stage again, this guy went directly to the front of the stage, started dancing the Macarena dance for some time without anyone joining him. Then, after he finally stopped, he went back to the other students on the stage, received, as everyone else, a rose as a thank you present, and just started eating the goddamn flower. Since that night, he sort of was the weird kid at school. Now, a few years later, I believe that he just wanted some attention and didn't know how to get it other than being weird. Kind of sad actually. In fairness to that kid, acting weird is probably the least harmful way to demand attention. Yeah, that kid sounds only like 15% weirder than the regular theatre kids. He probably topped out at a couple of video game tattoos. At my middle school, 3 guys would lock hand at recess every day and run from one side of the area to the other yelling amoeba. Anybody who got caught joined them, and it continued until the amoeba was so wide it was impossible to avoid when it passed. These were the weird kids. They sound fun. Late to the party, but he dressed in full WWII British Army uniform and playing an accordion. Even the bullies left him alone. Lol, I once overheard one kid tell another kid, not to mess with me cause I'd shoot him for sure. Lol, he wasn't he wrong. He was caught fucking a sheep in our ag plot at our high school one morning. Reminds me of a story my dad told me. My dad and his buddies were hanging out, and somehow the conversation turned to people having sex with sheep, and how disgusting it was. Then one of the people there said, "What if it was a really good-looking sheep?" The dude was known as the shepherd for the rest of the time he went to high school. Hanging out with me was a dead giveaway. The way he stared back at you when you looked in the mirror. We had a guy that would sit on female classmates and try to feel them up. He also once got caught stealing underwear from a washing line. He used to get bullied for being obsessed with buses, and he was rather overweight. I did really feel for him when 2 girls took pictures of him topless and sent it around school. Still isn't he make up for the creepy touching though. We had another girl who had moved to our school from Poland. She was bullied for being different and obsessed with horses. We tried to include her in our friend group so she wasn't so alone, but she was rather standoffish as a result of the bullying, so didn't really partake. We had a girl who was bullied for having a glass eye, and everybody would bully her. Turns out she lost that eye when she has cancer in it as a child. We had a girl who was on the autistic spectrum. I believe she explained that it was Asperger's. She would walk around talking to herself, and would constantly have her head in a book. Walking home she used to go sit up a tree and read before going home. She would shut down any conversation and explain that she didn't want friends and wanted to be left alone. She was bullied relentlessly, as was her younger sibling as a result of her being bullied. It got harder for them when the younger sibling came out as trans. Basically, I unfortunately came from an area of self-entitled people who were obsessed with themselves, and anybody less than them was considered trash. It was a weird dynamic of really rich posh kids looking down / being snooty or claiming to be hard on chuffs, and the people from council estates that couldn't afford to keep up with their standards. Nothing against council estates here, My school had several suicides down to bullying, and nothing was done about it. When I was a little girl in Poland, we all had ponies. My sister had pony. My cousin had pony. So what's wrong with that? Greater than when I was a little girl in Poland, we all had pony. I hate anybody who had a pony growing up. In a booming voice, it was me. It was me, Austin, it was me all along. Oh, son of a bitch. Weird name. Always dirty. Didn't talk to anyone. Turns out he worked really hard, went to Cambridge, and is now a high-level lawyer. Parental neglect. Weird family life. I went to high school in Las Vegas in the 90s. Important. And there was a kid in my school who dressed like Elvis every day for 4 years. Everyone just called him Elvis. We didn't know his real name. He did the little Elvis dance too. Nobody bullied him. He was just Elvis. I hope he is somewhere living his best Elvis impersonator life. I am glad to hear that no one bullied him. Me too. It was a weird time. There were a few movies about Elvis impersonator/Vegas in general that were kinda popular then. And we were in Vegas, so it was just like, oh, a kid who dresses like Elvis. Cool. He would fill up spray bottles used for cleaning and such with body spray, and douse himself in it to the point that his clothes would be visibly wet. His mission was to fuck all of the 10/10 girls. And even though he looked like Marty Feldman cosplaying as Eminem, but the biggest thing he had going against him was his arrogance. He would walk up to a girl that never displayed any sort of interest in him, and when he would get rejected he would go off and make a scene to embarrass her, calling her a herpes-riddled bitch, and how she's going to regret not hopping on him